Good afternoon. It's August 2nd, 2023. I'm Sergeant Sarah Ashton-Cirillo with the Armed Forces of Ukraine, coming to you live and direct from the Territorial Defense Forces media studios in Kyiv. You're watching Ukraine in the Know. We have so much to discuss tonight, so as usual, I will remind you to go ahead and bookmark, share, and repost, or for those who still refer to it as Twitter, retweet this show. We will be discussing combat clashes on the front lines. Where in the world is Gonzalo Lira? Along with 40,000 tons of grain that was destroyed overnight by the Russian terrorists, and what to do with Russian war criminals once they are in Ukraine's custody. As mentioned, on the front lines, 40 combat clashes took place over the last day. Intense fighting between the Russian invaders and the Ukrainian defense forces led to a situation where, despite their best efforts, Russia was not able to go ahead and break the Ukrainian lines. Ultimately, when we look back, we will see this time and again over the course of the last days and weeks since the counteroffensive began, which is the fact that despite Russia's attempts at running interference against the armed forces of Ukraine and all of our forces, they simply have failed to not only stop us, but to counterattack in any way that would hinder our progress in returning Ukraine to the 1991 borders and an implementation of President Zelensky's 10-point peace plan. Speaking of the counteroffensive, a report was issued today by Politico, a U.S. online news magazine, stating that unnamed sources from the United States government stated that Ukraine was underperforming during the counteroffensive and that we are simply unable to measure progress by anything more than hundreds of meters. I'm holding this ruler right now because ultimately it doesn't matter how we are moving forward as long as we continue to move forward, and make there be no mistake over the fact that our troops are advancing in 3 different directions while holding off Russian offensive actions in the north towards Liman and Kupiansk directions. Ultimately, I challenge all those in the international media who want to remain nameless to let us really understand where you're getting your sourcing, because here in Ukraine, we understand that the counteroffensive is moving as planned and liberation is Ukraine. During the liberation movements, we have taken custody of a significant amount of Russian prisoners of war. The announcement was made today that those Russians who have engaged in crimes against civilians, war crimes, will not be turned over in prisoner exchanges. The reason for that is because justice must be had on behalf of the people of Ukraine. Ultimately, those Russians who have raped, pillaged, and murdered Ukrainian civilians will be treated as the criminals that they are. We know that Russia is a terrorist state. However, we expect more from soldiers who are fighting with us on the front lines. I have fought at the front. I've fought at the zero line, as many of you know. There is respect for those that we are fighting. We understand it's us or them. However, among those who choose to take the war out on civilians, no punishment is too great for those criminals. Moving ahead towards the fact that Russia is a terrorist state, overnight, the Russian enemy destroyed 40,000 tons of grain. This coming on the heels of last week's 60,000 ton grain destruction. This grain was meant for China and the African continent. Ultimately, Russia's attempts at carrying out global genocide is in the works. People would say, hold on a second, is it genocide? Yes. When you destroy the food supplies of those people who are depending on it, such as people throughout the African continent, and you are withholding that food, you are committing genocide. And many of our partner nations in the global south, across Africa and South America, Latin America, and the islands, understand that Russia is nothing but a terrorist state, and therefore they are continuing to back us in this war for liberation, and for that we're grateful. Moving back to Europe, recently there's been some issues in the press regarding tensions between our Polish allies and the Ukrainian government. Ultimately, this is truly nothing but attempts at getting clicks for websites of the mass media. Our Polish allies have been at the tip of the spear with us in holding back Russian aggression, Belarusian aggression, and the Wagner criminals. We stand with Poland, and Poland stands with us. And we know that throughout history, moving forward, they will be the greatest of our allies. It's a friendship that can't be broken, especially in a newspaper's pages. When we go ahead and look back towards what's taken place over the last 17 months, we will probably see the kidnapping of 700,000 Ukrainian children by the Russian enemy as the most untold story and nonetheless the gravest story. However, little by little, children are being returned. Thanks to Save Ukraine's NGO, 10 children were escaped or brought back from enslavement by the Russian terrorists and arrived in Ukraine yesterday. Again, we're grateful to groups such as Save Ukraine, who have now repatriated more than 140 children that had been kidnapped by the Russian Federation. Now is the time in the show where I'm going to ask those who are interested in the more sordid details of Russian agents and Russian propagandists and Russian criminals to make sure that you retweet, bookmark, and share this video stream due to the fact, and we're live and I don't know who's coming in. Whoever it was, you're welcome. Come on camera. No? Okay. In fact, I want to quickly say, whoever wants to be on the show, if you're watching, you're welcome to come here. We can set it up and I will interview you. You are welcome to be a guest on Ukraine in the Know. I just wish that person didn't scurry back out because they would have been welcome to sit down with us. Ultimately, where is Gonzalo Lira? A couple of days ago, he made proclamations. He mentioned that he was a political prisoner, which was a lie. He attempted to get sympathy from the global audience. No, Gonzalo Lira, where are you? Your story didn't match up to what you said were the facts. You are nothing but a Russian propagandist and a criminal. However, I'm not the judge. I'm not the prosecutor. Ultimately, wherever you are, understand that you're entitled to a fair judiciary hearing in Ukraine. I believe you're guilty, but you will get a fair hearing based on the rule of law and democratic values. But again, I have to ask you and your followers, where are you, Gonzalo Lira? And where are you going to come out from next? So ultimately, that's your day in news for Ukraine in the Know. Make sure to stay with us, check out our Twitter feed, and of course, all of our incredible original productions at Territorial Defense Forces Media Studios on our YouTube channel at TDF Media Studios. Thank you very much. This was Sergeant Sarah Ashton-Cirillo reminding you to support all of our troops, sailors, pilots, all those pushing back and fighting against the Russian regime. Slava Ukraini!